Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Gibson, and I'm here today with Stephen. And Stephen reached out to me not long ago and said he wanted to share some pictures with me. So I gave him my email, and I was intrigued by his photographs, to say the least. And so he agreed to come on with me on this presentation to talk about some very interesting findings where he lives in Scotland. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Stephen?
Yes, I live in Fraserburgh, Scotland. I've lived here all my life. I've been a fisherman most of my life. 4 years ago, I started realising everything was a lie. But before that, in 2015, I started seeing the lines in the sky when I was out in the boat. And it was every day they were appearing, maybe 50 miles long. And I started trying to make everyone aware, but no one wanted to listen to me. I mean, that was over 10 years ago nearly. When I did realise everything was a lie, I started just walking around the town to find things in the town that people couldn't dismiss. But what I found was all the old buildings and everything seemed to have like stories to them. If you looked right at the buildings, I started walking out the old railway lines, which is the former Buchan Way railway line. It's closed down now. And I just seemed to start getting downloads from our past. And I could see, like, when I came into the town centre, I could see, like, tram lines and people jumping off the trams and, like, way back a long time ago. And it was although I was getting downloads from ancestors or something, I got a feeling of. But then last year, I was down in the rocks, down by the lighthouse, and I could see that rocks. And the only thing it looked like was like big lumps of meat. I couldn't unsee it. So I started looking onto Google Earth to see if I was like I've seen other people looking at big animals and giants and stuff like that. I couldn't figure out what it was. It was only a couple of weeks ago I was looking at it and I thought, oh, it's a wing, a dragon's head. And then when I was walking out the railway lines, I started looking into the street names and everything like that. I think that was about the time I came across you and Chad with the deeper conversations on YouTube. And he was doing a similar kind of thing, breaking down words. And you find out words always have meanings in them. So I started looking at Kinnaird Head. I broke it down to like clan at the top, dead, because here they had the Highland clearances of the clans and that. So I thought it was maybe where there had been a Highland clearance. But when I found this, I thought, well, it's maybe the name of a dragon or a flying creature of some sort. And then I started looking into like Canaries and all that. And there's all the castles round about here. They seem to be lined up. And then you were saying your ley lines is sometimes called dragon lines.
It's very interesting, and what you sent me is very compelling. And so today we're going to share pictures that Stephen took. And this is a place that he's lived his whole life. Stephen has traveled. He said you worked fishing trawlers in New Zealand and in the Shetland Islands and Norway, but you spent most of your life here. So these are new revelations to you in terms of what this actually was. And it is fascinating to me that dragon lines are another word for ley lines. So that's interesting. And also the British Isles, if you look at it, looks kind of like a dragon, one that's kind of broken apart, but you've got the wings over here and, the head here,
Yeah.
and that was something that I had encountered years ago, long before I started doing my own research. So that stuck in my mind when you reached out to me about this. And you're not the only one that is looking at this location as a potential gigantic petrified dragon. You sent me this little clip. So you're not the only one that's picked up on this.
When I was a child, well, maybe like 10, 13 years old, an older man who was a mason told me there was a tunnel from the tower right across from me to another tower. I'm saying he's an old man. He died. He was only 3 years older than me when he died. But it always intrigued me there was a tunnel going through the town. I wonder if it's like the esophagus of the dragon or whatever creature it was.
So let's take a look at this place. You've been around all your life and you've fished for lobsters here.
Yep.
It's a good lobstering spot. And then it was just a couple of weeks ago that you started noticing what was potentially actually there. And you sent me a series of pictures that are, like I said at the beginning, very intriguing and compelling. So here's a picture of what looks like a nostril. To me, it looks like a nostril. I mean, it could be an eye, but I'm kind of leaning towards nostril on that one.
Maybe. I thought it was maybe that's part of the wing, and maybe it's just like a wound, some kind of wound.
Could be that too. And then there's kind of a bigger picture of that one location showing a little bit more in the rock.
Well, at the tip of its wing, I thought it was like a quarry. They dug away a quarry, but it was just like when I was looking at it, they filled it up full of like rubbish bottles, and it's all stuff from 1800s, 1840s, 1840s to 1870s. It's just like landfill, but it's been getting washed away with the sea over the last few years, and that's why the tip of its wing is more noticeable. But I can't unsee it now. But I think the tower is built right on top of its head, and inside the tower has the old gargoyles on the roof, where you can see what looks like to be a dragon's head, I think. And it's got a hold of a lighthouse.
And you were kind to send me a picture of that, and we'll get to that here in just a moment so you can see it. I think what you told me is
Mm.
that you realized that the rocks that you had been on were actually biology.
Yep. There's been two oil slicks there in my lifetime. Not sure if they're deliberate or no, but all the rocks were covered in black oil when I was younger. And then there was another one, maybe the last 25 years it's been cleaned. But last year in the summertime, when you seen the rocks, it couldn't be anything else. It was like, it just looked like meat you would get out at butchers.
And as far as the comment about the oil slicks, I definitely have my suspicions. I did quite a bit of research on modern history since 1945, and
Oh,
I got as far as 1996, but the number of oil spills and chemical spills was incredible. I have my suspicions about that, and I also have my suspicions about storms, so I wonder about the storms too. So more rocks with lots of creases. The interesting one there.
you can still see it, can you?
What else you sent me? Here's another one. Just an interesting effect in stone that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see all of those lines and creases, as opposed to something that might be like skin or fibrous tissues or tissues or something along those lines.
This is around the wing. I think it's the wing.
And this is underneath. I think we're going to come to a location here in just a moment, but there's several buildings around this location. So there's a tower that we're going to come to, a lighthouse beside it.
The lighthouse is built on top of a castle, and the story says there never used to be a light there, but it kind of contradicts itself with the gargoyle inside the old tower, because the tower is supposed to be the same age as the castle, and you can tell the gargoyles they're like original.
So this is all around the base of the tower, correct?
This is more like on the wing. Under the tower, I believe, is the head. The wing goes right round past the foghorn. That would be the tip of it. So it stretches for about maybe quarter of a mile. I used to think that was like a man-made quarry. When you see it from Google Earth, it looks like they've covered it up, because this is all conservation area. There's a lot of German plates and German crockery that comes out the dirt, bottles from the 1840s, whiskey bottles. It looks like there's been a reset and they've just took everything off the trains and dumped it there.
1840 is a year that gets my attention because there was a lot going on during that time and what we've been told about our history. Like you said, just mentioned the reset. It's like it would have started around that time. I think in the mid 1700s on. Then 1840 was like things were starting to ramp up. There was a lot going on during that time.
Here, when I started walking around in circles, I was thinking it was like 1874 to 1903 was a lot of things happened here. There's a lot of bells, houses with bells names. Belvedere, that was 1874. And right across the road is the local football pitch. That's called the Bell's Lee or Bell's Lie. And I just wonder if the bell's there or something. Belvedere, it sounds a bit like the bells are lying there.
That's interesting. What's coming to mind is something called Bell and the Dragon. Let's see if I can find it. Bel. I'm not familiar with it other than the name of it. Bell and Dragon. Bell and the Dragon. So it sounds like it's biblical. The
Aye.
narrative of Bel and the Dragon is incorporated as chapter 14 of the extended book of Daniel. The original Septuagint text in Greek survives in a single manuscript. That's interesting. It might be one
Aye.
of the Apocrypha, one of the books of the Bible that was taken out.
Our story begins with the extended version of the Book of Daniel. When young King Cyrus was crowned king of Babylon after the passing of his grandfather, King Astyages, Daniel was taken by King Cyrus, and he found favor just like he found favor with King Nebuchadnezzar and King Darius. Most people do not fully understand how gifted Daniel was. Daniel was half as gifted as King Solomon in knowledge. King Solomon had knowledge of things in heaven and earth, whilst Daniel had knowledge of all things on earth and the solar system. With this kind of knowledge, Daniel was very useful to any king who was in current power. King Cyrus allowed the children of Israel to go back and rebuild their temple, but kept Daniel as his advisor. The Babylonians, on the other hand, continued to worship Bel. The narrative of Bel, Daniel 14 verse 1 to 22. One day the king asks Daniel, "You do not think Bel is a living god? Do you not see how much he eats and drinks every day?" To which Daniel answers that the idol is made of clay covered by bronze and thus cannot eat or drink. Enraged, the king then demands that the 70 priests of Bel show him who consumes the offerings made to the idol. The priests then challenged the king to set the offerings as usual. The offering was 12 great measures of fine flour, 40 sheep, and 6 vessels of wine, and then seal the entrance to the temple with the king's ring. If Bel did not consume the offerings, the priests were to be sentenced to death. Otherwise, Daniel is to be killed. Daniel then uncovers the ruse by scattering ashes over the floor of the temple in the presence of the king after the priests have left, and show that the sacred meal of Bel is actually consumed at night by the priests and their wives and children, who enter through a secret door when the temple's doors are sealed. The next morning, the king comes to inspect the test by observing from above. He sees that the food has been consumed and points out that the wax seals he put on the temple doors are unbroken, and offers a hosanna to Bel. Daniel calls attention to the footprints on the temple floor, which the king then realizes by seeing footprints, along with more slender ones and smaller ones, shows that women and children also participated in the gluttony. The priests of Bel are then arrested and, confessing their deed, reveal the secret passage that they used to sneak inside the temple. They, their wives and children are put to death, and Daniel is permitted to destroy the idol of Bel and the temple. Because the Babylonians had nothing to worship, a great dragon was discovered in the nearby mountains, Daniel 14 verse 23 to 30. Sometime after the temple's condemnation, the Babylonians worshipped the dragon. The king said to Daniel, "You cannot deny that this is a living god, so worship him." But Daniel said, "I worship the Lord my God, for he is the only true God. If you think this dragon is a god, give me permission, O king, and I will kill the dragon without sword or club." The king said, "I give you permission." He thought Daniel was fighting the dragon using his bare hands. Because Daniel had knowledge of all living creatures on earth, he knew exactly how to defeat the dragon. Then Daniel took pitch, fat and hair, and boiled them together, and made cakes, which he fed to the dragon. He mixed fine flour, animal meat and camel hair to slow down the dragon's digestion. The dragon was also able to eat human food, due to people offering meat mixed with human food to it. So the dragon ate them, got bloated and burst open. Then Daniel said to King Cyrus, "See what you have been worshipping." As soon as the Babylonians heard about it, they were very indignant and conspired against the king, saying, "The king has become a Jew. He has destroyed Bel, killed the dragon, and slaughtered the priests." Going to the king, they said, "Hand Daniel over to us, or else we will kill you and your household." The king saw that they were pressing him hard, and under compulsion he handed Daniel over to them. They took Daniel and threw him into the lion's den for the second time since King Darius, and he was there for 6 days. There were 7 lions in the den, and every day they had been given 2 human bodies and 2 sheep, but now they were given nothing so that they would devour Daniel. The first time Daniel was thrown in the lion's den was for a duration of evening to morning the next day. Due to Daniel's old age, he could not live without food for longer. Now the prophet Habakkuk was in Judea. He had made a stew and had broken bread into a bowl and was going into the field to take it to the reapers. But the angel of the Lord said to Habakkuk, "Take the food that you have to Babylon to Daniel in the lion's den." Habakkuk said, "Sir, I have never seen Babylon, and I know nothing about the den." Then the angel of the Lord took him by the crown of his head and carried him by his hair. With the speed of the wind, he set him down in Babylon, right over the den. Then Habakkuk shouted, "Daniel, Daniel, take the food that God has sent you." Daniel said, "You have remembered me, O God, and have not forsaken those who love you." So Daniel got up and ate, and the angel of God immediately returned Habakkuk to his own place. On the 7th day, the king came to mourn for Daniel. When he came to the den, he looked in, and there sat Daniel. The king shouted with a loud voice, "You are great, O Lord, the God of Daniel, and there is no other besides you." Then he pulled Daniel out and threw into the den those who had attempted his destruction, and they were instantly eaten before his eyes.
Okay, little bits of information you get from somebody that lives there and knows the area.
There's a lot of castles and ruins up here. It's like they say it was William Wallace, but if he loved his country that much, would he really destroy it?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot to consider with all the ruins, not just there, but in other places as well. It's like something happened. But there definitely seems to be a strong connection with these dragons and Scotland.
Wales's flag is a red dragon as well. I think that's what destroyed all the castles. I think there was creatures flying around. The chimneys in the old buildings here, I think they were like an electric defence because they weren't used for fires. I think they had power devices on the rooftops, and that kept the creatures a static shock or something like that and kept them away from the buildings. I believe that's why there's so much ruins up here, maybe, because the castles that's all left seem to have all the electronic roofs. And I think it was defence for flying creatures.
That could have been part of it. It also could have been part of a free energy system that could have had multiple uses. And I think there was an advanced civilization and it got wiped off the face of the earth and out of our memory. But something that's coming to mind is what did happen? What happened to the dragons? How did they end up like this one, apparently petrified and covered up? It's like people know, but they don't know.
Definitely people know. They keep it secret for some reason.
And I definitely have my suspicions about the royal family. I liked your referring to Queen Elizabeth as Queen Elizabeth.
She used to spend a lot of time up here in Aberdeenshire. When you see the tower on top of the dragon's head, it looks like they were extracting something from inside its head, which makes me think adrenochrome kind of thing, because you've got Slains Castle 20 miles down the coast, which was where the story of Dracula came from. The word Dracula, it's got a dra in it. It just looks like dragon, Dracula. It's like similar, and they're very close to one another. I think the evil in the world maybe came from this blood thing that they were extracting from the dragon to get maybe eternal life or something like that. Trying to keep this bloodline with the dragons all being extinct or whatever happened. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, we haven't been told the truth.
We've only got our imaginations. They show us a bit of truth on the TV, I think, sometimes. Back in 1983, there was a cartoon animation called Dungeons and Dragons. I was about 6 years old. It was one of my favourite cartoons, but it was cut short. I watched that again, the first episode, just the other day to see if there was any clues. The first thing, when they go underground, it's like it's in an amusement park. They go into this roller coaster and they get taken down into this land where there's a dragon with 5 heads and a unicorn, a baby unicorn. It's like one of them's a ranger, a barbarian, a magician, a thief, a cavalier, and an acrobat. 6 of them. And then there's the dungeon master. He's like, all they want to do is get home but they've got to go and do this fighting with the Venger. Venger turns out to be the Dungeon Master's son, and all the time the Dungeon Master could have let them back home. He used the children to get to his son. But I reckon there's a lot of truth to cartoons.
I would agree with you on that. And Dungeons and Dragons was a very popular role-playing game when I was a teenager. I'm going to be 62 this year. So this was junior high and high school, so it was a long time ago. It probably still exists. And people loved to dress up. And one guy that made armor and swords, he was so into it. Interesting to find out what that connection would be.
I wonder if the swords harnessed energy of some kind for defence. I wonder if there is big flying creatures flying around, if maybe like a little static shock would scare them away. And if you've got your sword, you could have stuck it into the ground and maybe the shield put out the static shock. Everybody thinks we grab that energy from the ether. I believe it's from the ground, because I looked into pylons. The base of a pylon gets buried 18 metres into the ground, and I just think that the electric power is actually coming. It's the opposite way around from what we think. Like a cathedral is a cathode, but I think the electric's coming from the ground up. See how we think it's coming from the ether? But I think you definitely need height to get the power. And I just think a sword was maybe a thing that you could have stuck into the ground and maybe got enough power to get a static shock to defend yourself. It was just an idea I had last week.
You everything's on the table. And I guess this is really fascinating information here. This is the tower that we were talking about. And you said that underneath the tower would be the dragon, right?
Yep, its head. But I've also seen an old drawing, but there's two towers. It made me wonder if the five-headed dragon maybe did have multiple heads. It looks like they've been extracting something from the back of its eyeballs, centre of its head. Got me thinking about with the adrenochrome thing. They pour red paint there every year for, like, not sure if it's a ritual or what it is, but they say it's for a story of the king's daughter was seeing a guy. The guy got put into the dungeon down at the bottom, and she was living up at the top, but she must have threw herself off, and the blood is supposed to remember her getting thrown off, because there's a hatch on the roof with spiral stairs going up to it, because we used to play in it when we was kids. But I think there's more to it. I think it's like it's a ritual kind of place or something. It's all closed off now since I've started looking at it, like a lot of places.
Yeah, lots of secrets. So is this view from around the base of where the head is in the tower?
That's looking right down to its nose. That's on the side of the tower, yes. Like right above its eyeball. That would be its eyelid, I think. I used to put lobster pots at the end, and it was unbelievable amount of lobsters I used to get. So there must be some kind of either a hole that they go into or something they're feeding off of. This is just like looking right down to the point of its nose, and the meat rocks are over on the other side. On its wing. It looks like a wing.
Let's take a look at the tower here. You were telling me a little bit about this wine tower.
It's changed its name twice in my life. It used to be called the WYND Tower, Wind, and then it was the Wine Tower. No, it was the WIND after that, and then it was WINE. So they changed it to the Wine Tower to make it sound like a larder for the castle for storing wine and stuff. But if you turn the W upside down, it turns to mind. And then it looks like it's on the dragon's head's mind. But it's where the tunnel going right from the bottom of it, right up to the tower across from my house. 3/4 of a mile, half a mile maybe.
And you told me that that was supposedly a windmill at one time?
The one across from me, yes. It's only drawings you ever see of them. There's never been actual photos. And when I've been inside it, it looks like it's really dangerous inside because it's all red bricks. It's collapsed in, which makes me think it's something's big's grabbed a hold of the top of it and everything's collapsed in. So if you go inside, it's like a plunk, red bricks everywhere, ready to fall down. But when you look around the top of it, it just looks like the bottom of a lighthouse. Because I believe that lighthouses was used for defending from these creatures, using the sunlight and concentrating sunlight.
I definitely think the lighthouses were part of the ley line system. But again, whenever this happened, whatever took place, they could have been used as weapons from what they were originally used for, which I think was energy, some kind of energy. So I do not believe they were built when we were told that they were built. I think the lighthouses have been around for a very long time and were part of this energy system. But I can definitely see how they could have been used as weapons, because so many things have been probably used for good at one time, but they've been completely turned into some kind of weapon. And so that would definitely make sense to me. You were telling me that you can't get into that area now, right? But you could when you were a kid.
No, it's all closed off. It just got closed off recently. I think it's like a cave. The other side of the tower, there is a cave that you can crawl into, but it's a very small hole. It's one of the strangest buildings I've ever come across because it puts up with it. We get a lot of bad weather where it's at, and it's withstood every bad storm, and it's still perfectly straight, lined up. It just baffles my mind. There's like 3 levels, and there's definitely there's a tunnel goes up to the castle, but right where the blood is, underneath there's like a cave entrance, but it's either been closed off with rocks or it's too small to get in. But I believe that's where a tunnel entrance would be going up through the town.
I can't help but notice that that looks like the ridges on a dragon's back down here. These rocks down here by the water
Well,
with the points.
I think that's its head. I think that's the nose.
So that's the view that we saw
The,
earlier.
yep,
This would be the tip of the head.
yes, definitely.
Definitely pointy. Something going on with
And when
that.
you can see its lips when you're down in the rocks as well. It's like they've obviously been mining something from it because in certain days it just looks like pure gold underneath its lips. There's like a little cave. They must have been mining something from it. The right wing seems to be a bit more damaged with the weather, but when you see this wing here, it just goes right round past the foghorn. I can't unsee it now. It's like, it must have been huge.
It sounds like it. Looks like it. Is this a fence here?
Yeah, but that's a fence that just appeared. That's just been put up recently, just since I started looking at it, really. Right, if you look at it down by the rocks, you see there's like a different coloured rock. I believe that's its mouth. It's like a light coloured quartz or something.
Would that be this part here?
Just along to the right a wee bit. Aye, that bit. Yeah, that goes right down the nose, near enough. And then you can see it's like a bird's beak.
Just another view of the wine tower.
Yep. I think this is one of the oldest buildings in Fraserburgh. There's a mausoleum next to the church, and there's another one out at the graveyard. The graveyard's got a lot of history as well. It looks like it could have been a cathedral or something at one time, and they've pulled it down because the fireplaces are all still inside the walls. It's in the top floor. The door in the corner, that's where the spiral stairs goes up to the hatch in the roof.
So are these the gargoyles you're talking about
Yep.
that are dragon's heads?
Well, it looks like the dragon's heads have been removed. It's just like dragon's feet or some kind of creature's feet grabbing it. You can see it's like the bottom of a lighthouse or a round tower building.
There's a close-up of one of them.
That's a close-up. It looks like the side of it's been grinded away or something, or sandblasted. But you can see its leg, and it's got a hold of the round tower, which I think's a lighthouse.
There's definitely a lot of dragon connections here, just in this one location. Apparently on top of a dragon.
Directly on top of its head. I was looking at some other old buildings out in the country, the castles and that, and a lot of them have that round towers with it looks like it could have been a lighthouse or something at one time. That's why I thought it was maybe defence, using the sunlight to scare the creatures away or shoot them down. Or the lighthouse here, that's like 3 million times magnification. So if you remove the cover at the back and got the sun shining through it, it would just be like a magnifying glass. It would be like a direct energy weapon, I think. But it would only work through the day.
So let's look at some of the things that you sent me about the lighthouses. You said within a short distance there are a number of lighthouses along the coast near this location.
Yep.
And I thought that picture was interesting that you sent me.
I think that was from one of the fairs in America. I think that one could have been Chicago Fair, maybe. When I seen the lighthouse, I thought, because they like to show off everything that was old technology. I believe these things were on top of all the roofs of the big castles and houses, big estates. You often see like around, I used to think it was bell towers, but this is just a few miles from us. You look at it, it's got like a round, it looks like it's got a lighthouse in the middle of it. I was looking at it yesterday. I'm not sure if I'll find the photo. I don't usually use this thing. It's this thing. That looks like what the dragon's got. You see it?
Mm-hmm.
That's in the courtyard. That's out in the country. I believe lighthouses was on top of these things, and they've removed them. And that's why you've got like little slat windows, how they say in the castle, so it was for shooting arrows through and stuff like that. I think the way it was little slats was for looking out to see if there was dragons coming, maybe. Because I don't believe that we were fighting and going to war all the time, the way they tell us. I think we lived in relative peace and harmony before they could build so beautiful buildings and things. But the thing that they would have been defending themselves from was big flying creatures, I think.
It's interesting things to think about. So this is the lighthouse right next to the location of the tower and the dragon.
Yep.
And is that a museum today?
It's a museum now, yes. It was in working order until 1995, I think.
There's another view. So there's actually two lighthouses there.
Yep, that's like an automated one. That was maybe built in probably around the time the main one closed. But the big one is Kinnaird Castle, Fraser's Castle maybe, but it's still Kinnaird Castle. And then there's Kinnaird Castle, 70 mile down the coast in a place called Buchan, a big fancy castle. I think there's about 6 or 7 lighthouses within 15 miles all down the coast. If they removed some of them, there must be probably been a lot more that we told us that they're windmills or something like that. Yeah, another one was water towers.
Yeah, I've seen water towers that look like lighthouses too. Okay, so those are the lighthouses that you were telling me about.
They go down Peterhead. That's like the next fishing town further down. And then just past Peterhead, you've got Slains Castle. That's where the story of Dracula came from. And I noticed that's got a lot of round towers on it as well. They might have used the energy for mining as well, because there seems to be a lot of mining towns that have been replaced with fishing. That's been left out of history as well, I think.
I want to go back to a picture here. So where was the fish cannery that you were telling me about?
That's just right behind the tower.
Okay, so this is a tower, I think, right here.
No, that's Foghorn.
But you said that there was a fish cannery for like 150 years?
Yeah, it used to be called British Fish Canners, BFC. It's now called IFC, International Fish Canners. I just find it funny, it's called a cannery. Find a connection with Kinnairds, Canaries, and canneries, and the amount of money they get from the government for grants over the years, because I used to work, I've worked there a few times in the cold stores. Why are they doing that? It's impossible they've got to be making a loss doing this kind of thing. And it was although they were deliberately trying to make a loss because they were getting big government grants or something.
It's also interesting that you were telling me that this location was bombed more than London during World War II.
Yep. It was nicknamed Hellfire Corner. In fact, where I'm sitting just now was bombed. There was a girl in the bath died. I think she was 15 years old, or maybe younger. But there was no trace of her found. Every place where they've bombed, I believe, was something to do with the tunnels, because there's all these red bricks. These red bricks, can you see me? These red bricks, they're everywhere. Wherever they bombed, there's this red bricks, but they're not all the same size. They're like, it's obvious they've been for tunnels or something. And it got me thinking it was maybe biology at one time as well, like an esophagus or something. Because everywhere they bombed through the war, they've built like red brick houses, little wash houses for the like sheds for doing your washing in. Where this one was bombed, I mean, a house took a good blast. The house is fine, but I think there's stations. There's a station at either end of the street. And if you look at Google Earth, you can see it's like it must have been like a train line going up and down here. I'm not sure if it went underneath, but I think that's what they were bombing. They were bombing like tunnel entrances, I think. Everywhere that was bombed has got these red bricks, and they're just like, every brick's a different shape. They break up very easy as well. So I can walk around and I'll see a red brick building, and just know, it must have been bombed during the war, just by looking at the bricks. There is other red brick companies started up making red bricks, but I believe these ones every brick's a different shape. So it's like, it was either some kind of machine that made tunnels, or it was like petrified insides of a beast, a creature or something. It was bombed more than London during the war. More casualties as well.
These mist-covered mountains are a home now for me, but my home is the lowlands, and always will be. Someday you'll return to your valleys and your farms, and you'll no longer burn to be brothers in arms. Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering as the battle raged high. And though it had been so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms. There's so many different worlds, so many different suns, and we have just one world, but we live in different worlds. Now the sun's gone to hell, the moon's riding high. Let me bid you farewell. Every man has to die, but it's written in the starlight, in every line in your palm. We're fools to make one, all our brothers in arms.
That's the bottom of the street, yeah. That's a North School. So I think it's like the North Station. And there's a lot of tunnels down there as well. This is all on the same side of the street as where I am just now. But when they comes up through the shops, you can see are still like old rail buildings still. They're now warehouses selling carpets and stuff, but you can see it looks like it was built for trains. So I think all the schools are train stations. And then when they've had their reset or whatever they've done, they've maybe only gave us like a little bit of it. Like Glasgow's got a subway, it just goes round in a circle. But I believe it goes all over the whole realm, I think.
You sent me a historic picture of, is it Salton Square?
Yep, the main town centre.
Does it still look like that?
It's just like a car park now, but it's similar. The only thing they've done away with the toilets in the middle, because I believe that toilets was actually like a platform for an underground rail network.
That would make sense.
I'm 100% sure it was, because looking at Aberdeen's underground toilets, and then you think the word toilet is loo, Loo, and then you've got all the Baker loos and loo stations. And I spoke to someone down in London. He said that they did close off platforms and turn them into toilets. It looks like they've done it everywhere, and then eventually closed the toilets off and put a monument on top of it. The rail network is a lot bigger than we've been told, especially in Scotland, because walking on them all the time, you can see, oh, it's an old rail thing. And then I started seeing old rail platforms that are now bowling greens and tennis courts and things like that. But you can still see the old railway platform, and it's like, there's no history of a rail platform here. So why are they keeping it secret? That's when I started looking into the rail side. I think they were hiding history.
I think so too. Is that the same place?
At the same place now, yes. I'm not sure about every town, but here, if I see a red floor like that, I just know there's a tunnel under it. I've got one next door here. Its path's all red. I can tell by looking at the buildings now. If you look up to the top of the building, there's symbols on the buildings. It tells you there's a tunnel underneath it. I've listened to music all my life, but I've never actually heard the lyrics in songs. It was just the sounds I heard. And then I had this moment a few years ago when I realised that everything's a lie. I started hearing the lyrics in songs. And I thought, it just made a lot more sense, like Jimi Hendrix' Red House. So I started looking at red houses, and I thought, there's like 2 red houses in every street here. And I study it, and I think, oh, the tunnel goes right underneath that red house. Then I looked at the numbers of the houses, and they're all 6s and 6 9s and 3 6, or the numbers add up to 6. Like next door's 5 4, so it's like 9. You can tell by looking at the top of the building if there's a circle. That's usually an indication that there's a tunnel. Or if the lintels have got like a big block in the middle of them. So I started seeing there's tunnel symbols and the red houses. Once I started talking about the red houses, they all started going up for sale. I think I've maybe pissed a few people off because they've been gatekeeping on this kind of thing for so long, but I just want to find out the truth, the same as everybody else. If I started from the centre at home, people would have to listen to me, but I just found people worried about where I'd got the information from. It's like a big secret. This church here, that's the old parish church. That's 1903. We used to speak French here, I think, because I found a few stones hidden from 1600s, was it? And it was all French. So we've been repopulated a few times, I think. But all these churches, they must have underground as well, I think.
Is this a monument in the square?
This has got a unicorn with a lion around the side of it. That's right on top of the platform. Well, I think it's an old platform. I've not actually got proof, but I think I've got enough proof.
Yep.
I can look at any town in Scotland or England now, and I just know where the tunnels are by looking at the buildings. You look up and you'll see there's just a few little things that you can tell. And there's usually a mason living in the house, which gives it away as well.
Sure does. An older picture of the same area?
Same area, yes, with a lighthouse in the background. It's a wide road, is it, for cars?
A lot of people on foot.
It's called the Broadgate. I think when you see gates, it means there's tunnels, gateways to down below.
And then it looks like it's covered by dirt or something.
It could have been like mud flooded or something. I'm not sure, but there is buildings further down here with the windows, the ground level. So there's definitely something been buried.
Interesting photo.
It's slightly changed now. They've got maybe a pedestrian side and the left-hand side's out to the middle of it. It's just a smaller road now, but it just looks like they've been hiding history as they've been going along.
Somebody knows what the truth is.
When I was looking into the old maps, when I was still working on the boat, I found an old map in Fraserburgh. It was actually called Fleur, Fleuar, I think it was, Fleur. And I started thinking, oh, Fleur of Scotland, that's like the anthem. Then if you go up the coast, you've got Rosehearty, that's a little village next. And then you've got Gardensdown, and I thought, oh, Fleur of Scotland, when will we see your lights again? And it's the first lighthouse in that. I've never managed to find that map again. There's like a bench down beside the beach. It's got the Feuar's managers written on it, and I thought, it's like the Fleur without the L. I thought, that's interesting, Feuar's. And the name of Fraserburgh, it just looks like a Razorborough if you add a line under the F. The same way, if they're doing coastal programmes all around Scotland, you'll see they go to every little town and village, but for some reason they always seem to bypass Fraserburgh. And I've seen it happen a lot in my life. It's like, oh, we'll maybe get on TV. It bypasses from maybe Peterhead to Macduff, and it totally misses out Fraserburgh. And it always feels like they don't want people to know what's really happened here, I think. Big businesses have been pushed out. There's a guy started up Brewdog, making beer. And I think that's a multi-billion-pound business now, but they got pushed out because where he was at was on top of tunnels. He ended up getting pushed out and had to go to a place called Ellen. But now it's a multi-billion-pound business. Although they don't want to see anybody get ahead, everything's back to front here, I think. Hiding stuff.
Lots to think about.
It is a lot. This is the one at Buchan.
And that's near where you live?
That's the other side of Aberdeen. No, it's like 70 miles away. It's got the same name as the lighthouse, Kinnaird. I reckon these things in the roof was like an electrical defence kind of thing. We've been led to believe it collecting energy from the air, but I think it was actually an energy up, like an electric fence kind of thing. A lot of them are built on top of water, mineral wells and places with water.
There she is. You said she spent a lot of time in Scotland?
She spends a lot of time here, either at Balmoral or Braemar. I find that strange. It's so cold up here.
So this is the location of Brecon Castle, where the red is.
And we're right up in the corner.
And you're up here.
Yep.
And that one's Balmoral?
Yep. Ba Mora. I think the Ba is the black sun. I think they've been hiding that as well. The Mo being moon and Ra being sun. I think there's a third entity in the sky that we can't see.
That makes sense too.
It makes more sense for being like electrical, like you say, a positive and a negative in the Earth, and how we get eclipses and stuff like that.
See this video you sent me.
That's what I think. Maybe names dramatic.
That's a good illustration of what you're talking about.
I was looking at cathedrals and catacombs a while back. So it was like I went down a cat hole. I seen a cathode power actually goes up, and all the bones. There's usually a catacomb underneath a cathedral, and I thought bones are really good for conducting electric, I think. And I thought it's maybe made a battery kind of thing, all these bones. I thought the cat at home, maybe it was a cat licked the bones clean and then they got polished and put in batteries. But when I looked at cathodes, I thought the power goes up. I think everybody's thinking that we get the power from the ether. When you see a bolt of lightning, it looks like it's going down, but maybe it happens that fast that your brain just thinks it's going down. But you've been told that way. I think the power comes from beneath and comes up. That's why they made us wear rubber soles and stuff, because to stop us getting our full power. I grew a beard the last couple of weeks, and I've noticed I'm getting electric shocks off my cat. It's not a good thing, but it's like I feel like it's one of our senses that they've tried to take away from us, the rubber soles and that. Because I've been looking at lightning yesterday, and it does look like it explodes out the ground when you look at the smoke. But I think our brains just think it's going down. It makes sense. If the Earth's like a motherboard, the power would come up down below. And it's free energy there all the time, and it's been hidden from us.
And I'm glad you mentioned that about bones conducting electricity, because I've been trying to figure out the link to cemeteries, because they show up on ley lines a lot, and that would make sense. I know they're a piece to the puzzle. I was just trying to figure out what that might be. So what you suggest with that makes a lot of sense to me.
There's a lot of castles round about here. That's Braemar. I think that was the Queen's favourite place. I couldn't find the photos of her there, so she must have got a lot of privacy there, maybe. Otherwise she liked it.
You sent me several photos of castle ruins.
I think it just looks like a dragon's grabbed the top of it and flew off. There never seems to be any piles of stones beside them. You'd expect there to be like big piles of stones. That's what they call a cairn, a pile of stones. This one, you can see where the foot of the animals grabbed the bottom, poked its feet through. That's what I think. I can't unsee it now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly peculiar with the way that just those particular stones are missing.
So I've always questioned, why is all the castles in ruins and William Wallace defeating the English? And it's just like a nonsense story, I think.
I have my suspicions about those kinds of things too. That's an interesting looking one.
They're everywhere. I've been around the coast on the boat, and you see them everywhere. And that's the answer I always get. Oh, William Wallace set fire to them, but a fire wouldn't do that. I mean, how could you do that?
That's the thing. They tell us things without expecting us to question or start looking into it more, because we're the authorities.
You see the thickness of some of that walls. It's like there must have been giants or something build that in the first place, but why build them so thick? They must have been protecting themselves from something. But even like so, this one, you would expect to see like a big pile of stones next to it. But
Funny place to build a castle. On top of a cliff right next to the water.
is it Alaska you're from, Michelle?
I lived there for about 11 years. I moved away this last time in 2012. I've lived in Arizona for 8 years now and consider it home.
Aye.
So this is Find Later Castle?
Yep, that's like just further up the Murray Firth west of me. That's a rare castle as well. It's built into the side of the cliff. The name of it sounds like they found it later, because it is pretty hidden.
I'm glad you pointed that out. That's a really good point. Find later
Sounds
castle.
like,
Oops, we
looks like
didn't
it.
see it the first time we came through here to find things.
You wouldn't see it, so it's even when you travel past on the boat, it just looks like part of the cliff. There's a big chunk of that missing as well. They've all got these little stories. When you walk down to them, there's like a historic story about it. It's like a drawing with a little fishing community, and I think the fishing thing was a cover up of our history as well. I believe Fraserburgh was a mining town. They've had some kind of reset and then replaced it with the fishing boats in the fish factories, which would cover any smell of whatever happened here. The story they gave you for Buchan, I believe happened here, but maybe like mid 1800s or something like that, when the trains were busy. But that's another story. But the railway line is called Formartine Buchan Way, and I looked up the meaning for Wald in Germany is a forest, Buchan forest. This whole coastline's Buchan for 20 miles either side. And when I looked into the Buchan Wald years ago, it was like 100% sure it didn't happen there. I think it's all happened here, but maybe in a different time, mid 1800s, maybe.
You're talking about the
Yep,
concentration camp, right?
yep. When you heard people's stories about it, it was like they reckoned it was like 40 mile big. They went on to trains and they didn't know where they were, but that's why I believe trains have been hidden here so much because they were taken here. I have found evidence of it here, I think.
Where you are, it's called Buchan, right? That's the name of
But
it.
yep, yep,
Buchan.
yep. Buchan Coast. There's evidence of it all 20 mile either side, I think. It's definitely been covered up.
With things I've been learning lately about insane asylums, for example, they were doing the same things that the concentration camps were. Whatever they were doing inside those insane asylums, waterboarding and shocking and lobotomies and all
Aye.
kinds of abuse, that was going on in the 1800s, time that you're talking about. So those kinds of things were going on well before the Second World War, unfortunately.
There's a lot that happened here. Bad stuff. Even just thinking about it makes me feel sick because I've found enough evidence just walking around that there's definitely something happened here. And I think there was 4 mills used to be in the town, and I used to play in some of them when I was a child. Then they've all been ripped down and made into like little housing estates and that. But I think they were maybe used for shaking the ash for the gold. Every mill is like across the road from a big chimney place, and the railway lines come right into them as well. And it's like, and now they've like housed people on top of it, and schools where the chimneys are and things like that. It's definitely a lot of evil happened here. I think it's been covered up. I don't even think the Masons now that probably don't even know about it. I think they've kind of been detached from reality as well, even though they maybe get to know secret. Their degrees get them more separated from reality, I think. But they like to think that they know everything, but I don't think people realise what's actually happened here on the scale that it did. They're just walking around in circles. I started getting this. I'm not sure if it was like ancestral energy or we walking on the railway lines, if I got some kind of downloads, sun gazing all the time. But I definitely feel like I was going back in time and actually reliving being in that time just for a couple of seconds. And it was like dreaming. And then once you look around, you could still see the evidence, the stuff I've seen. And that's when you started questioning, why have they hidden all this? There's definitely been a lot of darkness happened in this.
Well, even where I live in Arizona now, it's interesting that you mentioned the place just now with the chimney because I want to say it's a school district office now, but it's, red brick building and then there's a tall chimney right next to it. And I know nothing about the history of the building. I just noted that because every time I go out, I see things. And like you said, once you see it, that's all you can see. And so I think what you're talking about unfortunately happened on an industrial scale, essentially
Definitely.
all
I
over
think
the earth.
it's evil in a different scale, I think. But I'm like you, I'm optimistic. I feel like the more truth we bring to light, the more their plans failed. I feel like it has failed, but there's still people clinging to it, I think.
I completely agree with what you just said. They have not succeeded. And,
Yeah,
the fact that we're able to talk about it and it's coming to light as hard as it is, I think it's important for people to realize what's really been going on here and the
yeah,
depth of it. But like with this and everything else that I bring forward, it's not for fear. It's not for people to be upset or anything like that. It's just, it has been hidden from us. And they've gotten away with a lot more than we can even begin to imagine and understand. And I really appreciate the time that you've taken with me today and all the information that you shared with me and the photos and everything else.
No, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate all your videos. I've been listening to you for a while now. We're definitely on the same kind of. But the thing that gets me is he likes my brother. He's got a PhD, whatever. He's a physicist, and I've been listening to a lot of geologists lately, and they've obviously put a lot of time, put their whole lives into studying all this stuff, and they're really good at what they've studied. But how are they going to react when they find out everything's a lie? It's easy enough for me because I was pretty much uneducated anyway, but it's like people that's really put a lot of time and effort into studying stuff. And I don't think they'll ever comprehend that it is a lie. I think there'll be too much for them, I think.
It's going to be a percentage that the indoctrination has been going on for a long time in every aspect of our lives, especially in our educational system and academia, like you're talking about. But I guess all we can really do is put one foot in front of the other and not put our blinders on and be open to it. And you've done really well today, and you've got a good eye for these things. And I really appreciate your willingness to do this because it's fascinating information. And definitely a missing piece of the puzzle. The dragons underneath our feet. Like you said, what did you tell me? You said you've been playing on those rocks since you were about 10 years old.
Since I started watching Dungeons and Dragons, I think. So that's what we did when we was kids. We just used to go out and play and go swimming in the rock pools and enjoying outside. Most of the time we played outside, down the rocks. It was just like 2-3 weeks ago I realised it was I don't know what you think.
The moment of realization. You've been playing on a dragon, or fishing on a dragon, lobstering on a dragon, working on a dragon.
Yep, there's always something new, is there?
Every time I leave my place, I see something. Appreciate your time and your hard work making this happen. And if you want to do it again sometime, I'm very open to that. So just let me know.
That'd be great.
Thanks again, Stephen.
Been a pleasure. Thank you, Michelle.